Tropical storm Ophelia is inland in North Carolina, passed right over Emerald Isle, and now continues to churn there in eastern North Carolina. We've had rain moving up the coast, and we will get into what we can expect going forward because this is going to hang around for a day or two. This is a special Saturday Joe and Joe weather show. So normally we take off on Saturdays, and we are brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area with everything you need when it comes to mulch, topsoil, sand, and salt. Salt for this coming winter, and of course, well, didn't need it this time around, but you never know. If you need a new generator, or maybe you just want to make sure your home is ready for any kind of stormy weather, you can head over to Omni. 6317-561-125 is the telephone number, and nowhere can you find better prices. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Tempest by Weatherflow, Joe. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. And if you make any purchase of the weather station or whatever else they have, because they have a lot of weather gadgets and gizmos, use the coupon code I want a weather station, and I think maybe for another day or so, you get
$40 off. 40.
So if you missed that, then you get 10% off, which ain't too shabby either. So 12 noon, everything seemed to work according to plan with regards to Ophelia. Got down to, I think, 980 millibars. It might have been a minimal hurricane briefly.
I was very surprised they didn't upgrade it at 11 o'clock and just simply say for the heck of it that it is a hurricane.
Well, I think on that discussion, which I didn't read till this morning, they said something to the effect of that an eye was forming, and then it stopped. It stopped forming. So, who knows? This might be one of those that they, in post analysis, they may upgrade it because of after they look at whatever observations they look at and go over the recon reports. By the way, Anthony Orr, who's our resident hurricane statistician, interesting statistic, Joe. Since August 20th, all right, since August 20th, this is the 11th named storm, the 11th storm that has formed in that time frame, and the only season which has had more Atlantic named storms form between August 20th and September 22nd is 2020, when we had an even dozen that developed in that 30-plus day time frame. So it's been very busy.
Well, they were very accurate in, when I say they, I mean the folks over at Colorado State and also the National Hurricane Center, in saying that in spite of the fact that we have an El Nino summer and early fall, that would do nothing to limit the hurricane activity. It would be above normal hurricane activity. I'm not going to speak for you, Joe, but I had said flat out that I didn't think that was going to happen, because I thought that an El Nino would certainly be over the exceedingly warm water temperatures, which is why they didn't go for above normal hurricane conditions. I thought maybe the El Nino effect would cause a wind shear that would prohibit or at least preclude any significant number of storms, but that did not happen. And so you're right, 11 storms so far since August 20th, and there may be a few more to come before this season is officially over. 16 now. You have to count the subtropical storm in January, so 16 tropical systems this year. So the Weather Service had they gave that range of 14 to 20, so there's certainly it's certainly possible that they can hit that top number. That you're right. There's plenty of time. I mean, there's still another good 2 months, and October can be a busy month depending. Some years, yes. Some years, not so much. At least the first half, anyhow. I saw some winds in North Carolina that were gusting up
into the 70 mile an hour range, and maybe even a little bit higher. There were some gusts in coastal New Jersey. Beach Haven, I saw a gust to 62, and I think I also saw, well, I did see it. I think it was 62 also for Sea Isle, New Jersey, and it's been windy pretty much up and down the Jersey Shore and right along the immediate south shore of Long Island. I mean, you have to probably be out on Fire Island or Jones Beach because the winds just inland there are, there's nothing crazy. I saw 20 to 30 in most places. In New Jersey and South Jersey and back to Philadelphia down to Washington, D.C., it's actually been pretty gusty there. I've noticed some gusts up into the mid and high 30s. And on top of all of that, what a miserable day it is in the Northeast. I mean, talk about doom and gloom. It's doom and gloom and raw. Upper 50s to around 60 at best with rain and the northeast wind. I mean, you cannot draw a more miserable picture weather-wise than what you've got today.
Well, I'll tell you what, the forecasts in terms of the winds have been pretty much spot on. They have worked out fairly well because we saw that the storm, as it was intensifying, as it was approaching the North Carolina coast last night, the gradient was tightening up, and we were getting some significant winds and also some significant waves and swells, even all the way up to the Jersey coast and south coast of Long Island. So the wind forecast is pretty much on the money. But in terms of the precipitation forecast, Joe, I have to say that I think that the precip amounts are going to fall way, way short. At one time, I was noticing that the rainfall amounts for where I am up here in Putnam Valley, 55 miles north of Midtown Manhattan, and they were saying that, oh, you may see as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain. Well, quite frankly, looking at all of the short-term models from earlier this morning, and so far, if you had looked at the models, some of the model runs from a day or two, right now we should be experiencing significant moderate to heavy rainfall, especially with a lot of FGen, a lot of Omega. And so far, Joe, my total rainfall in the bucket here at Putnam Valley has been all of 5/100ths of an
Wow.
inch of rain. We've had light rain. It has been falling lightly, but there's nothing that remotely suggests steady or heavy rainfall. And looking at the new GFS is out now far enough to encompass the next couple of days. It has been showing this day in and day out, along with the European. They've been lockstep on this. That all of the heavy duty rain has been or would be off to the east and southeast of the tri-state area. It's still showing that, and it looks to me like that's going to be the story right on through the day today. It might even be a period where the rains will let up a bit overnight tonight to just mist or drizzle, if that much at all. And then it will restart again as the remnant effects of Ophelia cross through the Delmarva and into South Jersey during the latter part of tomorrow and tomorrow evening. But even there, the just isolated areas of moderate to possibly heavy rain, the GFS is suggesting that might happen over portions of the extreme lower Hudson Valley, let's say south of 287 and into parts of New York City. But really, if you're
Yeah,
looking,
that part of it you got to be a little careful with because the rain we're seeing today, and by the way, the rain has actually been heavier in Pennsylvania, particularly in parts of central and western Pennsylvania. At least those bands have gotten enhanced. There's probably some lift going on with the northeast wind because you do have the tropical system here is separate from the warm. There's a warm front, and I'm going to bring up the surface map because you don't see this too often, but there's actually a warm front that's analyzed in cutting across southeastern Virginia and the southern part of the Delmarva Peninsula. And when you look at the observations, for example, in western, central and western North Carolina at the moment, it's in the 50s, and the dew points are in the 50s. Now, where the tropical storm went inland, of course, the dew points and the temperatures are all in the upper 60s and low 70s. So it's in a tropical environment there. I don't know what that station is that's offshore of the buoy that's offshore. 70 of Southeast Virginia, 75. with a dew point of 75. There's another one northeast of there that's 79 with a dew point of 74. Then you jump to the other side in New Jersey, in northern Delaware. It's in the upper 50s and low 60s. I mean, it's just there's this. You've got the warm front, and we've been talking about this frontal boundary all week, and whether the low was going to separate itself from that frontal boundary and become a tropical storm, which it did. But we're actually getting the precip that's up here to the north is from that frontal boundary, really, and it's not from around the core of the tropical storm.
Right, right. And you're right. The actual remnant, the actual storm center, which will be tracking through eastern Virginia and on up into eastern Maryland and possibly northern Delaware, that will pose a problem probably for tomorrow. And we'll see what that can generate. But even if it does generate a few bands of moderate or heavy rain, it's going to be, relatively localized and relatively short-termed. I mean, but really, a couple of people have already emailed me or pinged me on Messenger this morning saying, "So where's all the heavy rain I've been hearing about? Where's all of that?"
Well, these are the forecast shoppers, Joe. Who of course they watch everybody else and then claim you said it.
Yes. Well, there's one guy, one gentleman whose name he's been following me for years since News 12, and his name is Bob Mason. And Bob Mason, yesterday when he saw my my Facebook forecast for the next couple of days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he said, "So where's all the heavy rain?" Because I didn't mention heavy rain in my forecast. I just mentioned rain, which would fall steadily this morning and then peter out this afternoon, and then a chance for a few more rain showers on Sunday into Monday. But I did not mention or use the term heavy or possible flooding or anything else. And he was questioning me. He says, "So why aren't you mentioning anything about heavy rain?" And I, quite honestly, all through this entire period, I said, yeah, it's going to rain. It's going to be pretty much a washout, as you would say, Joe, gloom and doom, because it's out there right now. And you go out there, it's like 57 degrees, light rain falling, cloudy, dreary weather. But in terms of potentially heavy rain, the kind that would give 2 to maybe 4 inches, I really didn't see that. I really didn't see that happening at all with this system. The global models were putting most of that activity, again, mostly east of here or north and west of here or whatever. So if we do pick up 2 inches, it will be spread out over a period of from now through the end of the day on Monday. But it's going to be, going at the rate that we're going at right now, that's going to be a bit of a stretch. Plumes, for example, the Plumes forecasts, Les Plumes, was saying about 2 inches for White Plains and about 1.7 inches for Poughkeepsie.
But that's for 90. That's through 96 hours, though. So
Right.
that takes you through Monday. So it would have to be, it would be whatever you get today plus whatever you get tomorrow into tomorrow night. I think you got to be a little careful with tomorrow, only because, and you're right, there's going to be a certain amount of localization with that. It's probably not going to be area wide, but there might be a decent patch of, when I say decent, I mean a standout patch on the radar of heavy rain that winds up sitting over someplace. I think
Right.
I think that's the danger tomorrow, that somebody gets under that and gets a fast few inches of rain, but as you said, more localized and not widespread.
Decent point is what happened last Monday. This past Monday, I wasn't even in my area, was not even in the zone for flooding. The WPC folks had the potential for marginal flash flooding occurring over central and eastern Connecticut, eastern Long Island. I wasn't even in any kind of advisory or possibility for flooding. And what happened? This low pressure system that developed, there was a wave of low pressure on a stalled offshore front, rippled north and eastward, and it was it was kind of localized right over my area. And within a span of, like, let's say an hour and a half, I picked up like an inch and a half of rain. It was pounding down to beat the band, and there was some flooding in my vicinity. The same thing could happen tomorrow, but again, it's so difficult to say because, again, the localized areas that develop are difficult even for mesoscale models to pick up on. But there is that possibility tomorrow. I noticed that WPC, whereas they have my area in marginal risk tomorrow, I'm just barely within the slight risk for flash flooding tomorrow. Marginal today, flash flooding tomorrow. So it may happen. Again, we'll have to see what happens when the remnants, or the corpse, if you will, of Ophelia gets closer to us as to what exactly we're going to see here tomorrow. But so far, as I said at the onset, in terms of wind, the models have done a pretty darn good job, because those winds have been rather strong, rather gusty, especially along the shore and coastal areas. And heck, if you live near the Jersey Shore or the south coast of Long Island, you don't need me to tell you that. I mean, it's been that way, and it will continue to be that way for a while.
Yeah, those forecast shoppers, Joe. Where did he? Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. My software disappeared. Hold on a second. Where did my software go? This is not good. All right, hang on one second. Oh, there you
Technology,
are. Okay.
amazing.
No, it was just, I don't know. It was just
Let me just say I was a little late this morning because I'm coming on. I go on Zoom. I pick up the Zoom thing, and what happens? Zoom
update.
announces, "Oh, it's time for an update," and I
Yeah.
said, "Now you got to update me when I want to go on," and so I had to sit there and watch the little lines slowly but surely scroll, indicate that they were updating correctly.
You know,
So
what I was going to say was the forecast shoppers, Joe. I love when they say, "Well, how come so and so is saying, especially in the wintertime, how come so and so is saying 2 inches, but you're saying 6 inches?" And my response now is just to turn it on them, and I said, you know what? You shouldn't be asking me this question. You should be asking them the question that, how come you're only saying 2 inches, but the great and magnificent and ultimately one of the best forecasters ever to walk the face of the earth, Joe Rayo, um, is saying exactly. You have to turn it. You have to turn it on its rear end. Yeah,
I've met.
I
I
it's
told the story before. John Carpilio, the news director at WHJJ in Providence, Rhode Island, when I did that station back in the 80s, and we had a major nor'easter or winter storm coming up. And so I would record my forecast, and I'd say, I'm going 2 to 4 inches tonight, and they're petering out later in the day and on into the evening. And then after I finished the recording, he'd, he'd stop the tape and he'd say, well, Copeland says,
yeah.
because the Boston weather forecaster up in the Boston area, I forget what his first name was, but his name was Copeland or whatever. Well, Copeland is saying 4 to 8 inches. And, I said, good. I hope Copeland, and I said, John, I'm going 2 to 4, and Copeland's going 4 to 8. So if we hit 4, who wins?
Well, I hope they write Copeland a check. You
Well,
know,
like
for being mentioned on somebody else's air.
right, exactly.
Oh, here's the radar, which there are patches of moderate rain that are coming in from the southeast. I noticed a couple of stations around New York City reporting moderate rain. The patch of heavy rain that Joe was talking about earlier is one big patch is southeast of eastern Long Island and Block Island. That's actually moving northward. It looks like it wants to go over Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. Also, so that's this area up here. Okay. Now
Right.
you've got the core of the tropical system, which is this area down here, and everything else that you see is the warm front, which is you got that east-west band that's all the way up to Boston, all the way up to Albany, or almost all the way up to Albany. And you see what I'm talking about there in central PA. You got the enhancement of the rain. That's got to be because some orographic lift that's going on
Right.
with the
Right.
east wind. So it's almost like you're looking at two different systems here with the warm front that's pushing northward and the tropical system that's uh, inside what we could call the warm sector.
That's a good point about the orographic layer. In fact, from that view, you could almost pick out the Appalachian Trail. Right along the Appalachian Trail is where you're seeing the enhancement, because the winds are, you said, Joe, coming from the east or east southeast. And so it goes upslope. Forced upward, it causes more cloud cover and rain and shower activity. And you could see that gentle sweep from central Pennsylvania on up through the Catskills and just to the south of Albany. That's where the most hilly or mountainous terrain would be, and that's why you're getting the enhancement and the heavy rain.
trying to envision a low like this in the wintertime and what that would have done, or
Yes.
what that would be doing. We'd be, in some places you'd be sitting, like, for example, if you were in southeast PA right now, there's a giant hole that's developed, and in northeastern Maryland and parts of southwest New Jersey. So
Right, and
you,
that hole, presumably, after we get the warm frontal passage through the warm air advection precipitation, as I mentioned later today and tonight, that hole, according to at least the latest GFS, the 12Z GFS, is going to be pretty much over the Hudson Valley and the tri-state area. So things are going to peter out to either nothing or at least a fine mist or drizzle. That's when people are going to be walking around and saying, "So what happened? Where's all the heavy rain?" Keep your mouth shut, because you may get what you want tomorrow with the actual remnant effects of the storm itself and the upper level low as it comes northward later tomorrow and tomorrow night.
David Fuller is looking for 70 dew points because he doesn't like 60 dew points. They're too cold for him. Thank you for hitting super chat. Keep working the overtime, David. he's been hitting the tip jar a lot lately, and we really do appreciate it. Also, I did see there was another one.
Cecilia Hernandez, no. Rayo's Coins. There's somebody on the chat board, Joe, called Rayo's Coins. And Cecilia Hernandez is saying, "Am I related?" And I am not. In fact, she says, "I assume Rayo's Coins is a relative." No, you can assume not. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's Bobby Rayo, who shows up occasionally on the chat board, who just simply changed the name. I'm neither related to Bobby Rayo nor to Rayo's Coins. So I just want
All
to
right.
make that point clear.
And the
So.
chairman, Scott Briller, hitting super chat, taking Mother Briller to Wildwood next weekend. Please don't tell me the trend is your friend. Well, we'll get to that. we'll get to that when we look at the GFS, which is already out. The new one is out um, far enough. Just really quickly, just to go over a few other things on the radar. A little action in far southeast Florida. We've got some storms up in eastern Nebraska, northwestern westward into South Dakota, and some downpours in North Dakota. Also in parts of Wisconsin and back into uh, the western part of Lake Superior and northeastern Minnesota. We've got some action of rain in Arizona. And also up in the Pacific Northwest, we've got a wave of rain that's moving in there. The Storm Prediction Center, their page didn't load well. Okay, I fixed it. The Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk to South Jersey. It's on the other side in northeastern North Carolina, so that's through tomorrow morning, and that reflects the tropical system itself, which will probably be post-tropical soon enough. And you've got marginal to enhanced risk from north central Texas northward up through eastern Kansas, western Missouri, slight risk back up through Iowa and into southwestern Minnesota and southeastern South Dakota. The tornado risk is 2 to 5% there. It's also 2% in the marginal risk to the east. Now, for tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center has nothing in the east for tomorrow, so that's good. And marginal to slight risk from north central and northeast Texas into western Arkansas. And we might as well look at day 3 while I got it up on the map. An east-west area across central and east Texas of marginal risk. Otherwise, nothing in the east, and except for the northwest, nothing in the west. WPC this morning still going with the 2 to 2.5 inches along the immediate coast from southeastern New England and Long Island to about New York City, coastal New Jersey. In the areas as you go south, this started at 7 a.m. Anything that fell before 7 a.m. is not included in this forecast. Inch and a half, Joe, almost up to Albany. So it's giving you, WPC says you'll play some catch up maybe. We'll see. And also down in central and south Florida and off both Florida coasts showing a lot of rain. Also in that area of severe weather risk in the up and down the Mississippi Valley and going up into Minnesota and the eastern Dakotas, anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to as much as pockets of 2 to 3 inches, and heavy rains in the next 7 days in the Pacific Northwest, 5 inches or more for western Washington and western Oregon. So on the wet side there. So let's look at the new GFS, Joe, shall we?
Surely.
Actually, let's go back to the 6Z run because there were a couple of things on the 6Z run that I want to point out. Okay, so the GFS once again, very consistent these last few days. Did really really well. The European not so much, and uh, the Icon actually I think also did a fairly good job in catching on, and the Canadian in catching on that this low was going to become a tropical system. You see it here tomorrow morning. That first batch now is gone, obviously, but you do have the low to the south, the remnant low that moves off the New Jersey, the Delaware coast, and there's rain that gets up, not quite all the way up through northern New Jersey, not quite uh, north of New York City and over Long Island, and then it goes out as that low finally sinks south southeastward and goes away. Then later in the week, we mentioned there's been on again, off again on the runs where there's another inverted trough that forms off the East Coast, and this was the 6Z run last night. And I saw this, and I said I hope this doesn't happen. I hope this doesn't happen, Joe. You've got another setup. It's a little different. There's enough of a difference in this respect that I don't know if we're going to have the same idea of whether this system becomes tropical or subtropical. Maybe it does, if this were correct. But this is something that I really don't want to happen because you're going to take a low that's going to go out to around 70 west and then turn northwestward and back in from the east. And that you don't want. I mean, the gradient here, if this were correct on next Sunday night, would be just off the wall in parts of Long Island and New Jersey. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's just what the model was showing. And
That's a 6Z, though.
that's the 6Z. So I wanted to just bring this up because I haven't seen what the 12Z is done yet. So let's see. Let's take a look at the whole overall run of the 12Z and see what happens. So we'll back it up. First off, we've got same idea for tonight and tomorrow morning. The only difference now in the GFS, Joe, is that the low that represents the remnant of Ophelia is a little further north, so it does actually develop an area of moderate to heavy rain during later tomorrow afternoon. In fact, let me switch it to the radar. Let's see what it looks like on the radar view rather than the precip view. But you see it here on the GFS. It does show this is tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m., just in time for the Jets game. And there you have it. So it does have, it does show moderate to heavy rain areas, eastern Pennsylvania to at least the northern half of New Jersey to the Hudson Valley, and then eventually to Long Island and maybe into western and southern Connecticut for Sunday afternoon into Sunday night, and even still around Monday afternoon. The radar view on the GFS still has the back edge of rain, southern New England to Long Island to coastal New Jersey. So maybe you'll make up those. Maybe you'll make some of those numbers up on the back end. Not impossible.
We'll see.
Yeah, it'll depend. A lot's going to depend on how much of this the core moisture of Ophelia, how much of that holds together as it becomes a remnant low and moves to the northeast. So that's that. Now let's look at the upper air and see where we're going in the longer term. By the way, thank you by 55 likes so far on this Saturday midday Joe and Joe special Joe and Joe weather show, because we're special and you're special and everybody that's here is special. So if you like the show, hit the like button because we always love going over 100 likes. So here's so here's the upper low, which was, by the way, off the southeast coast on Friday. So that's one difference here. Take a look at that. It's off the southeast coast. That whole feature just kind of warmed the whole process. We've gone through it enough times. In the west, you've got a big cutoff that's moving down in the Pacific Northwest. This was earlier this week. That was part of the equation of lifting this northward, and now a strong storm that's off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. You can't see it on this map. There's a wrapped up cutoff there. The one that came in a few days ago moves into the Dakotas and Minnesota, and you still have this sort of troughing that runs from there southeastward to the southeast coast. And now look at this. There's an upper low. I don't know where this sort of backs westward from Nova Scotia here. Take a look at this. For a minute there, I thought I was running the maps backwards, but there's an upper low that backs southwestward from Nova Scotia to off the coast of Virginia and then keeps going southwestward to North Carolina. Bit of an omega-ish block here
Yes.
that is setting up. So that's interesting that this upper low is actually backing from the northeast to the southwest. There it is off the Carolina coast. Now, let's see what it does at the surface, because that should be fascinating. All right, so let's go to the eastern view. We get a little deeper into the fall and we start seeing snowstorms in the west. We can start using, the full view. But for now, we'll just stay with the eastern view. Ah, look at next Saturday, Joe. There's a 997 low in eastern North Carolina. Where did that come from?
Could it have been anything to do with the upper low that's
Oh no,
back?
no, I'm sorry. No, that's today. That's Ophelia. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm looking at the dates wrong. It was September
yeah.
23rd. So that's Ophelia. That does its thing, goes away.
Don't
Um,
pull a Sal Blandino on us, Joe.
oh, he's in right now. He's sitting with a sack over his body. He just um, don't expect much clearing. Certainly not Monday. And it might be a bit of a. It might be even tough in some areas on Tuesday until if that high doesn't build down enough. And if you look at this, you wonder whether it will. I mean, it might be still kind of cloudy-ish on Tuesday. Then we go on to Wednesday. Now at this point, the upper low is backing westward. Oh, good. Okay, there's no sign of anything forming off the southeast. Oh, there it is. There's your inverted trough, but it's weird. It's out in the ocean and it's backing southwestward. Look at that. It's a little strange how
Yeah.
this happens. But if there's an upper low from the northeast that's moving southwest, bottom line is though, if this run is correct, okay, then eventually enough of that high does build down. But it may take until later next week for it to happen, and then it would set up for a really nice weekend maybe next weekend, if that's the case. Although the stuff out in the ocean has me a little bit nervous. But um, well, I don't want to see lows coming in from the east. I don't want to see something coming up and then going in from east to west, because that plus don't we have a full moon next week? Next week?
No, we just
Oh, we
wait a
just
minute.
had it.
Full moon. Yeah, we do have a full moon next week.
Next week we got a full moon,
Harvest,
and it's toward the end of next week, correct?
the harvest full moon. I think that's on the 29th. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want that. You don't want a coastal low coming 2 days after the harvest moon. Okay, you don't. So uh, that pretty well, I think, kind of sums up what's going on. I did a quick look to see if anybody there were some wind gusts in Chesapeake Bay and some of the weather stations that were in the bay itself that were gusting up into the 50-mile-an-hour plus range. But except for one, in the last hour, except for one gust of wind, one area, one spot in South Jersey that was gusting into the 40s, everybody else was kind of sitting in the 25 to 35 mile an hour as far as the wind gusts are concerned. So, excuse me. So, trying to think if there's, anything else we need to talk about today.
Think that we'll show tomorrow evening.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Your audio faded.
Do you think that we'll be doing a show tomorrow evening?
Tomorrow evening, no, we will not be doing a show tomorrow evening, nor will we be doing a show on Monday.
Really?
Yes, we're going to take 2 days off because we've been working nonstop, and I needed to. But I have to finish. There's the color of my railings, Joe. Okay, I'd show you
I had
the. I'd show you
a little
I'd show you the big black splotch of black paint that I got on my armpit, but
there.
able was able to scour it off with one of those scouring sponges.
Baraxo.
Oh God, did it hurt? Uh, Leon Probitsky just hit super chat. Thank you, Leon. Most appreciated. And also Ken Musillo hitting the tip jar. Thank you very much for doing that.
Well, Leon
Yeah.
hit it. Leon hit it. Ken Musillo hit it. The chairman hit the chat board, hit super chat today. David Fuller and Trish Baraccio is mimicking David Fuller. David Fuller this week has been hitting the tip jar more than once, and today Trish Baraccio did it twice. Thank you, Trish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Everybody's been very generous this week with hitting the tip jar. Most appreciated. By the way, I don't know if I've said this before. I have a black spot. Do I have one under my arm? No. Okay. I don't know if I've said this before, but um, if there's a hell, okay, hell is up until today, up until the last couple of days, for me, my vision of hell is that you are sentenced to an eternity folding clothes. Because nothing for me is worse than folding clothes. It is the most, oh God, it's just awful. I hate doing it. We all do it. I hate doing it. But to me, that was my vision of hell. I have now changed that to painting railings on a deck. Okay? Painting railings on a deck for all of eternity is the new hell. And part of the reason is, first of all, it's very boring, very methodical. Um, it, you do I give you an example. So I did one stretch of railing yesterday, okay? And I did them one by one. All right? One by one, I did them. You have to do the outside, the inside, and then both sides. The railing, my deck is suspended. It's about 15 feet off the ground. So I have to hang off I have to kind of bend over the side of the railing to paint the outside. So I'm looking at it today. Somehow, I missed one side. I don't know how. I could swear I just sat there and did it one at a time. One. Then the fronts, then the base, then the top, and then I went over the other side of the railing to do the outside part. Anyhow, I've I have splattered so much paint from painting on the railings. Oh, I must have been I would say a quarter of a can probably has wound up either on my body or on the planks on the deck themselves. So I've spent almost as much time cleaning myself and cleaning the deck planks as I have painting the railings. That is the new definition of hell: painting deck railings.
I don't know. To me, hell is like when you're sitting there listening to the same piece of music that continues to go over and over and over
Oh,
again.
how about the Cars for Kids commercial?
Oh my God!
That is, seriously. I bet you the person who came up with that, because if you talk to anybody with that Cards for Kid that saw that, they do something in there to make it that when you watch it once, that song sticks in your head, and you, after only watching it once, you know it word for word. It is an abomination. It's torture. And I see that commercial, I would say, at least once, or down here I see it at least 2 or 3 times a day on TV. It's like, oh God, please let me, please let me die now and put me out of my misery. That is,
Rich Rich Rosmansky says hell is the Muzak version of Muskrat Love.
oh God. I often worry that the man who thought up Muzak might think up something else. So just be careful. Mr. Valbert 59. He's new to the
Yes.
chat board, Joe, and he hit the tip jar. Thank you, Mr. Valbert. Welcome to the very rare Saturday Joe and Joe weather show, which we only do when there's a storm around. Otherwise, to remind everybody, we're on Sunday through Thursdays, although we are at 7:35, though we are going to be off tomorrow and off on Monday. And Joe Z makes a good point. For snow lovers, hell is 33 in rain. There's a weather forum board on the internet. It's actually called 33 in rain. I'm still a member there. I haven't posted on there in years, but it's still there. 33 in rain. That is the most depressing observation for snow lovers.
Stas Philonikus used to refer to that song. It really wasn't a Christmas song, visually, about met my old lover in the grocery store. It was snowing
Oh,
Christmas
the
Eve.
540. That was the 540 song.
He called that the
That
five.
was Dan. Yeah, I came up with that, Joe.
Oh,
I came up with that. The 540 song. That's
I thought.
Dan Fogelberg. Old Lang Syne.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, the
snow.
every time it comes on, I say it's the 540 song, and the reason is, for those of you who don't know, so when we look at these weather maps, we always look for the thickness lines, which are the dashed lines on the GFS or on the European, and the 540 line is the thickness where usually that's where the rain snow line is. Sometimes it's 546, sometimes it could be lower than 540 depending on the time of year and the wind direction and all the rest of it. But if you know the song "Auld Lang Syne" with Dan Fogelberg, it is at the end of the song the snow changes to rain. So I used to call it the 540 song. He'd sing that part, we'd look up and we'd say, "Oh, the 540 must have just gone by." All right. Everybody enjoy your Saturday. I have to go finish cleaning up. Um, and we will see you back on Tuesday, okay? So we'll see you back on Tuesday at 7:35 p.m.
And thank you again to Mr. Valbert59. Thank you for hitting the chat, the super chat the first time around. Brandon Doherty hit the chat, super chat. Anthony Spiraccio, Leon Probitsky, Ken Musillo, the chairman, Scott Briller, of course, David Fuller, and not once but twice, Trish Spiraccio. Thank you all for hitting the super chat tip jar. Joe, we made it to 89 likes. I don't know if
That's
you
good enough.
good enough.
I'm
Okay.
my stomach is growling. I got to go eat.
I got to have my bologna sandwich now. So,
Uh, yeah, go ahead, enjoy yourself.
yes.
We'll see you on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Au reservoir.